What is financial planning? You're a veteran in the industry. I think you know it better than most of us do. What is financial planning?
I think Samina rightly said, financial planning is one of the aspects of actually trying to encompass the entire life cycle, from earning money to saving money to spending it to meeting your goals to transmitting it. So it's the holistic process of starting one's financial life from one point to the other one. So this whole process is called financial planning, and the more it is thought of, it's more it's planned and it's not ad hoc, the better the life cycle is, and it's more fruitful.
Is this really important?
In my opinion, of course, it's very important. It's important for 3-4 reasons. The first is, if you plan your money right, this gives you an armory to plan the rest of it right. Second, this is one thing which a person doesn't have a choice, right? Because he is going to be earning money and he's going to be spending money. It's other subjects a person can actually take a back seat and say, I'm not interested. But money is an integral part of life, and it's as important as it could get. If planning cannot be extrapolated to money, then what's planning best for? I think money is what it's most important for. Third, the world is very dynamic. How earlier it used to be was not as dynamic as it would be. So we would spend decades investing in real estate, and that's the end of it.
Right.
But I think it's become far more dynamic, and there's so much more for a person to go up the learning curve like the global markets would have. So I think you rightly pointed out, the Indians are actually having a huge interest, and I think actually there's a paradigm shift in the interest levels of financial planning.
Right. Feroz, financial planning is not limited. Is it important in your mind to take advice or help of a professional financial advisor to get this pat down right?
I think, like we discussed, it's a very significant part of one's life, and if you're not going to be able to spend time on it, which is what happens with most of us, because you're going to get caught up.
You don't have the ability to do it, right?
Absolutely. I think it's twofold. One is the time to do it, and also the nuances of how to do it. I think a financial planner steps in and tries to be the catalyst to push you to do it, and also brings in the expertise. So I would definitely delegate it to a professional and not try to rediscover the wheel. And do it in not as best a fashion as a professional would. So financial planner being a part of your life, whom you could probably start building a relationship over a period.
So he's like a financial doctor, if that's what I can call it. And for me, the key aspects of financial planning.
See, if you break them down into 3 broad heads, one is the creation of wealth. Which is the most tangible objective, which is money. The second part of financial planning is protecting yourself against all the possible risks which could come this way in this journey of making money and actually spending it. And the last one is to transmit the strategy and also the wealth and the liabilities sometimes, and making sure that all these 3 heads are taken care of. So 3 heads: wealth creation, protection, and transmission in the broader categories would be how financial planning would be spaced.
Right. How do you determine net worth? I mean, is a personal balance sheet exactly like what it is for a company?
Yeah, it's not as complex as it's for a company. But I think drawing up the balance sheet is the most important first step. If you don't know your point A, you would not be able to define a point B and move from point A to point B. So the first point is to find out where you are, find out all the assets you have, all the liabilities you have, and then draw up a balance sheet and understand the difference between these two, which is your net worth. So that's the first very, very important step, because if you don't know where you start, you might not be very clear of where you're going.
Well, Feroz, we all know that over a period of time, if money is just left, it loses value on back of inflation. Can you take us through why inflation is a factor that we need to keep in mind? So it's not about the WPI and CPI data that the government tracks only, right?
Correct. I think inflation, again, which is nothing but a phenomena where your money keeps eroding itself over a period because it's losing value, especially in India, where you are speaking of higher interest rate, high inflation, mehngai, price rise, all synonyms to the same thing, actually erode your money on a daily basis.
So 100 rupees today is not going to be 100 rupees 10 years later.
Absolutely not. And if we did a research to aggregate all the last 30 years of inflation, and if a person had left a 100 rupee note unattended, its value would be about 5 rupees as per the government's inflation published over the last 30 years aggregated. So inflation could have eroded 95% of one's wealth, and that's one of the biggest risks you could actually envisage. Like, for example, after demonetization, people discovered a lot of money in lockers unattended. unattended. That's actually deteriorating in value every day because it's happening in a very small quantum. You're not able to realize the depletion.
Right. Talk about how does one determine how much money you would need? So it's not easy or probably not so difficult to say that you might need an X amount of money 20 years later, throwing a number off your hat. But that's not the right way to do it, right?
Correct, absolutely. See, what happens is you will have to actually find out the value of money at that point in time. So, point one, if a person wants 100 rupees today, okay, and looking at how inflation has panned out over the last 10 years, if he wants to figure out how much would he need 10 years from now, if I gave a thumb rule rather than a scientific calculator, you could actually double it every 10 years. So after 10 years, if 7% is the inflation, if you assumed, and if that's the assumption, then if you needed 100 today, and then you need 200 after 10 years, and 400 after 20 years. Okay. So now, first question when you're trying to envisage what you would need is just ask yourself what you would need today. Multiply it into 2 to get it after 10 years as the number you would need after 10 years.
To maintain your current lifestyle. This is not aspirational.
This is not aspirational. This is the
so
current
to just continue to live the way you live today, 10 years later, you would need to, of course, double that up. There's another aspect. We've talked about creating wealth and protecting it. What happens to transferring it to the next generation? How important is this? Because more often than not, even if there's a lot of wealth left, sometimes it's stuck in litigation, which you already referred to in our previous conversation. So to avoid all that, how do you make the process seamless of transferring wealth from one generation to another?
I think this is one place where psychologically it's very difficult to think. Most human beings are not able to come to terms with the fact that we all have a finite life. And planning for it is become a very rare phenomena. So I think, and it's 100%. This is 100% probability. Risk might have low probability, but this is 100% probability. For an event which is sure to happen, not planning for it, we plan the least. So it should be done. How does it get done? In India, it's actually reasonably complex, so that makes it more important for you to do, right? You have to have registered wills, you have to have transparency to your will, it needs to have clear documentation, it needs to have a modification if there are nominations not syncing with your investments. Your entire will can go for a probate, which is nothing but a court order to dismantle your assets, and that can take you a year. In that 1 year period, you can make no changes to the assets. When you see a lot of people running pillar to post to access their own parents' money or spouse's money, then you think it's ironical that the person actually earned that money in 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, and couldn't spend about 5 hours to make sure that that was seamlessly transmitted.
So all that wealth creation, protection nullifies if there's no transmission or transferring this to the people who you're doing this for, right?
Absolutely. I think it'll be ironical if you don't plan the last step.
I know this is a tough one, but when does one need to start worrying about this? Is it related to your life cycle again?
See, I think more so younger people need to plan for this. Surprisingly, when I've seen situations where a younger person suddenly has not been able to live that longer as he envisaged, what he is left behind is far more messier than a person who's 75 years old, because he's already come to terms that he is in the last lap of life maybe. But a person who's 30, and if there's a sudden demise, there's so much left undone. So I think younger people who have liabilities, especially who have liabilities, need to plan this.
Because it's not just about inheriting wealth, it's also about inheriting liabilities that you will end up with.
One important part is when you actually have yourself insured, and if there is a liability, if you have an insurance and if you have a sudden demise, you get the money, but the money needs to be managed very well till the goals arrive. You can't get your child married at a younger age because you've got the money right?
Sitting there.
So giving the capability to the dependent to manage the money is as important as giving the money itself. So you'll have to train the next generation or train the spouse enough to be able to handle this extra money which you've got and make sure that it's working till the goals actually arrive to get met.
So for whatever it is, financial planning is a serious business, right? But thanks, Feroz. Good talking to you this evening. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Financial Planner. Thanks for watching.